Thank you so much for watching Landumc Goes There. Please subscribe and hit the like button and the bell notification button. Seconds is a 1966 film that was directed by John Frankenheimer, and it starred Rock Hudson, Salome Jens, John Randolph, and Will Geer. The screenplay was done by Louis John Carlino, and it was based on a 1963 novel of the same name by David Ely. The movie was filmed around New York and Malibu, California. It was entered into the 1966 Cannes Film Festival and went on to be released by Paramount Pictures. The storyline goes that Arthur Hamilton is a middle-aged New York banker who's living in Scarsdale. He's married with a grown daughter that he rarely sees anymore. He's generally completely disengaged from everything in his life, based on a series of telephone calls he receives from his supposedly deceased friend, Charlie Evans. He is drawn into a company that provides him with a second chance at life, something he has trouble resisting. Initially, he did just that. He resisted, but they convinced him that he had very little to live for in his current life. His rebirth will include a cadaver to replace his current body after his death, enough money for his current family to live very comfortably after his departure. He'll also have enough money to start a new life, a complete surgical makeover of his current self, and a new identity based on his subconscious desires. This new identity is a Malibu-based painter with the name of Tony Wilson. To assist him into this transition to Tony, the company provides him with a counselor of sorts. He acts as a live-in housekeeper, and his name is John. He attends to whatever Tony requires emotionally to make the transition successful. Even with John's help, Tony is finding it very difficult to make this transition, despite or perhaps in spite of meeting a woman named Nora Marcus, who he falls completely in love with. He has to discover where he went wrong in his life as Arthur and where he went wrong in his transition to Tony Wilson before he can find out where he wants to go and how to achieve getting there. But the big question is, will the company help him achieve what he wants? Principal photography for the movie began on June 14, 1965. This was on a budget of $2.5 million. In order for them to shoot in Grand Central Station without attracting too much attention, the director hired a male model and a Playboy bunny to make out on the stairs while being filmed by a fake crew. This distraction allowed the real crew to shoot with a camera that was enclosed in a suitcase. This movie today is somewhat viewed as a cult classic, but initially the critics were pretty tough on it. They were so hostile towards the film's director that he refused to leave Monte Carlo while it was being shown at the Cannes Film Festival. Initially, the director, Frankenheimer, was real reluctant to cast Rock Hudson in the role. He felt that he was too much of a lightweight actor in comparing him to Laurence Olivier or Kirk Douglas. It was only after Hudson's agent convinced him at a party that Hudson could do the role that he went ahead and cast him in it. He went on to later praise him for his work in the movie. After seeing it, you realize that he is impeccably cast for this role. And it's pretty amazing the way this film has gained popularity. It's one of those few films that goes from being a complete failure at the box office to a classic. This was John Randolph's first film in 15 years. He had been blacklisted for his radical sympathies in the early 1950s, and his wife, Sarah Cunningham, later said that he had been on the blacklist longer than any other actor. Two other actors in prominent roles, Jeff Corey and Nedrick Young, were also blacklisted. The surgery sequence that you see in the film is partly Hollywood and partly a real, actual rhinoplasty operation. While this was being shot during a real surgical procedure, the cameraman fainted and had to be carried out. The director had to go ahead and take over for him and complete the filming of the operation. According to the director, it was Rock Hudson's idea to have two different actors play the Arthur Hamilton, Tony Wilson role, instead of having just one actor play both parts with makeup changes as they originally envisioned it. Hudson felt that he wouldn't be convincing at all as Arthur Hamilton, and he told the producers that he wouldn't do the movie unless he could just do the Tony Wilson role. The director agreed and felt that the film was much stronger because of this change. One problem they ran into was that Rock Hudson was 5 inches taller than his older self, played by John Randolph. This was worked around with a very careful choice of camera angles to hide this problem. Randolph and Hudson also spent casual time together in the days before shooting started, so that Hudson could learn to copy Randolph's mannerisms. It was initially thought that the reason there wasn't a very good response from this film is that there wasn't an audience for this picture. Most people wanted to see Rock Hudson in the normal, typical Rock Hudson film. And when they show up in a theater and they see a dark science fiction film, they scratch their heads. They just weren't interested in seeing a Rock Hudson film of that nature. The director and the cinematographer used a technique of mounting the camera on an actor with a rigid harness. This you'll notice in the opening sequence, and it's pretty obvious. There's a stiffness to it. It was also used in the drug-induced nightmare sequence. This technique was adapted after this by many cinematographers and directors. Although Rock Hudson is top billed in the movie, he appears on screen only after 40 minutes of runtime because the character he plays has a different face in the beginning, and he's not transformed into this new look until that point in the movie. When this film was released, actress Frances Reed had already been appearing for close to a year on Days of Our Lives as the beloved matriarch Alice Horton. This was a role that she became very famous in and portrayed for 45 years until her death in 2010. Now here's a really bizarre thing that accompanies the information that goes with this movie. Beach Boys composer Brian Wilson saw the movie in a theater during its first run. At the time, he was overworked and showing signs of a complete nervous breakdown. There's no doubt about it. He was crazy at that point. He loved the idea and the theme of the movie, changing identities and starting all over. But he found its downside really disturbing to him. He continued to ponder the movie, and he eventually got so sick mentally that he felt like his music rival, Phil Spector, had somehow convinced Columbia Pictures to produce this movie just to mess with his mind. If you've never seen this movie, and I bet there's a bunch of you that haven't, you need to watch it. It's a really well done film. Take a look at it. I think you might find it enjoyable. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.